Arcade Heroes.
We'll wait and see for another game.
Hey everyone, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and once again, I'm doing something a little unusual for my channel, but I promise there is something arcade related to it, so just bear with me. But what you're seeing here is the Intellivision Amico at the Salt Lake City, Utah event, but this was actually held in Lehi, Utah, which is about 30-40 minutes south of Salt Lake City. And Lehi is in an area known as Silicon Slopes. There's a lot of big tech or Silicon Valley companies that are set up nearby, and this was held in the Museum of Natural Curiosity, which is essentially just like a giant playground, indoor playground. But there are a lot of kids in Utah, a lot of big families, and so it makes sense between having lots of kids, lots of families, and having the tech world nearby to introduce their game console to the locals here. And I heard about this, and so I decided I'd go and check it out. And so this was held on October 2nd, 2021. But the Amico, it's a up-and-coming game console. It's not been released yet. It's been delayed beyond where they wanted to release it, mainly due to the pandemic and some of the massive shipping problems and expenses that are taking place with that. So they're still not sure when it'll be launched. My guess would be 2022 maybe at this point, but it's coming soon, and they have a lot of games for it. And so I'm going to talk about some of the games, other games that aren't the arcade ports first, and then we'll get into one of the remakes. But I've been following this for a while, and I was also filming with my camera, so that's why it's a little shaky, so apologies about that. But I've been following this for a while. One of the things I was really curious about was the controller, and this is what it looks like. And so it's kind of like a variation on the classic Intellivision game console controller, but it also is kind of like the Wii controller, so kind of like a blending between those two things into one. Now, the first time that I grabbed it, I was expecting something kind of heavy, but it was surprisingly lightweight, and like all the plastic and just the feel of the entire controller was lightweight, which I guess caught me off guard. But once I figured it out as to how the disc worked exactly, because the disc will spin if you move your thumb on it, but it really works like a D-pad. And so it also has tilt controls in it, so that's part of the Wii side of it, I guess you could say. And then, as you can see, it also has the screen built into it, which also is kind of a throwback to the Dreamcast. But as I played the games, I didn't find myself looking at the screen very often, especially with fast-paced games or the arcade-style games. But the touch screen generally works as a button in the game, and sometimes it just mimics the same button as one of the two. But the surprising thing about it, at least in Astro Smash I think it was, or Moon Patrol, the touch screen seemed to respond quicker than the regular buttons, and so that might just be due to early development, and there's still things to work out. But overall, I liked it. It's ergonomic, and given how lightweight it is, it's easy to use. And on top of that, my daughter is the one that you see here. She didn't have any complaints about it, used it very easily, and so if a 5-year-old can use it without trouble, then that's a good thing. Another thing to note is that these do have RGB LEDs built into them. As you can see in the picture, there's the green disc that's indicating the color of your player in the game. But I didn't notice much about these just because I was looking at the screen and not really my controller most of the time. I also believe it has rumble effects built into it, but that must not have been implemented in the games because I didn't really feel it in any of them, so I can't really comment much on that either. As far as durability goes, also, who knows? I only used it for an hour, so if there is any issues in the long run or battery life or anything like that, then it's kind of hard to say just from such brief usage. But just first impressions is once you get comfortable with it, it's easy to use and comfortable to use. So that's the controller. Let's get to the games. Alright, let's get to the games. So one of the things I want to point out before we really delve into those is that the Amico is not trying to be this graphics powerhouse system. The graphics are clearly well behind anything you'd find like on the PS5, Switch, Xbox Series X, anything like that. So I think you have to go into it with that expectation, not expecting it to be a graphics powerhouse or anything like that, and just focus more on the gameplay. It seems to do 2D stuff better than the 3D. I mean, otherwise, I guess you could say it's on the level of mobile games, but again, if graphics really matter to you, then you're going to have a PS5 or a PC anyways. If you're going to have something like this, then you're probably just more focused on the games. So let's get into those. This one is Evil Knievel, which is based upon the Daredevil of the same name, and you go through different situations and locations in his life where he did all of his stunts and go through things like he did, like Rings of Fire, or flying over flaming barrels, or driving your motorcycle over trucks and things like that. And so this is the single player mode where you have to reach a certain amount of points before the timer runs out to get certain things. You have to be careful as you drive there. This one does use tilt controls, and depending on how you tilt the controller when you're up in the air will affect your landings, like that. So you have to be a little careful in that regard. But I didn't get footage of the multiplayer mode on this one, which is very different, where it's like rocket darts. And so you're in a rocket car, and you use the tilt controls to aim your rocket ship between 1 to 4 players. And you launch off. You do have rocket gas of a sort, and you hold the button down to initiate that. And then when you launch off, when the timer reaches 0, then you see where you go, and then you push the button again to release your parachute and see if you hit the target on the other side of the Snake River Canyon. And so that one was a lot of fun, and my daughter really liked that one. In fact, she beat myself and Tommy Tallarico on that. So good on her, and also easy enough for a 5-year-old to handle. Next up is Astro Smash, and so this is a remake of a game that was on the original Intellivision. It was on the Atari 2600 as well, where I first encountered it. Obviously, it's been upgraded quite a bit from what it was like back in the 80s. And if you're not familiar with this one, it's kind of like Asteroids, but, well, Asteroids meets Space Invaders. And so you have your tanks on the ground, and the asteroids are smashing into the ground and damaging the track where you are at. And so you have to be mindful of that and just destroy them and collect power-ups along the way. This one supports up to 4 players as well. And also just taking a look at Shark there. But I thought Astro Smash was fun. I was surprised by how long it was on the first level. It was a lot longer than I expected, and it looks fine too. Like, even though the Amico's not this graphics monster, a lot of the games are just fine for what they are. Next up is Flying Tigers. So this game is pulling its influence or its theme from old Toaplan arcade shooters, but the gameplay itself is actually a lot more like a Euro shoot 'em up. And if you're not familiar with those, that's where the enemies are kind of bullet spongy, where they take a lot of hits to take down. And personally, that's just not my favorite. I kind of hate it when you have fodder level enemies that can appear on the screen and it takes like 5-6 shots to destroy them, and then there's a bunch of them, so you can never take them all out. So personally, I hope they change that before the final release. But this one is somewhat early, and unfortunately I did not get a chance to really film it, because after what little I did film, Tommy handed me the controller and I couldn't play and film at the same time, and I didn't have a camera on a tripod, just my phone. And so overall, the look, as you can kind of see there, they have the scanline old TV filter on top of it, but you can shut that off, and it does have an arcade mode, a challenge mode. I did make it to the first boss, but I just was kind of distracted. But that one did have something with the touch screen where when you fill the gauge, then what you see on the touch screen, then you push the button and that does your screen clearing bomb. But unfortunately, since I don't have more footage of this one, I'll just stop repeating this and let's move on to the next game. So when I first heard about the Amico, this was one of the first games that was announced for it, and that was Moon Patrol, the Milky Way Chronicles, which is a remake of IREM's 1982 arcade release, Moon Patrol. And of course, at the time, that game did get a number of ports. And by the way, that text there was just placeholder, as Tommy said, so that's not going to be in the final game. But as you can see here, it's been modernized for today's audience. And so you have different skins that you can choose for your rover. The rover itself still maintains somewhat of a look to the original. It doesn't look quite as blobby. But also at some point, for some reason, the language got changed over to German from English. But there'll be multiple language options, but it can be changed back. It also has multiple moons, and so multiple environments for you to play in. Whereas the classic one, so I recall, it was just all the same kind of unknown moon, or made it seem like it was Earth's moon. But here's Miranda, which is one of Uranus's moons, but obviously changed, given some liberty in the changes there with adding alien plants and all that sort of stuff to it. But as you should be able to tell, and what I got from playing this for a little bit, and thanks to Tommy for allowing me to play, because this game was not set up to play for the public there. It's only because I asked that he played it, and he's the one playing here, so that's where it's pretty good, since he designed a lot of these levels and set the rocks and all the targets where they go. But what I really liked about this is that it really keeps the spirit of Moon Patrol. It feels like Moon Patrol, and so the shots are the same, and a lot of the obstacles and the UFOs and things like that. Of course, things look different, and this is in 3D, but the controls are simple to play, and really with some tweaks, this could go into a modern arcade today. And I mean, obviously it'd be nice to get some better graphics and maybe change certain things about the pacing or the amount of lives that you get, but either way, it would work in today's arcade environment, and it seems to have a lot to it that can keep you interested, and old school gamers like myself going on that, at least more than the arcade original had. And so each moon has its number of checkpoints, I believe 26 checkpoints to go through, and they're not on this. Oh, there we go. So that's one of the checkpoints there, those green orbs that turn red. And then of course you just have all these obstacles, and so the controls, as sort of mentioned, are pretty simple. You have your fire button, you have a button to jump, and then you have the dial pad, I guess is what it's called, is for either speeding up or slowing down. Your rover's always moving. It's going to move at a certain set pace, but if you want to go faster, you push over to the right. If you want to go slower, you push to the left. And so a lot of the time, it's just about figuring out if you should slow down for certain obstacles, because your gun, it only fires one shot at a time, and it does go a little bit slow. So sometimes what can happen is you'll see a rock appear on the screen, and then you fire, and you fire too soon, and then maybe you'll run into the rock if you're going too fast. And so it's just about managing that expectation. And I'm not sure if I captured it, but this one is a little bit more forgiving on some of the obstacles. Like on the arcade original, if you touched a rock at all, you would die. But on this one, like, you jump over a rock and your back wheels hit it, then you'll just kind of fall over the rock, but you won't die. And so that's a nice thing. And then we have a different level here. This was a different guy playing. This is Sharon, which is one of Pluto's moons. And this is at the top of the list. And this is where the the guy was, I was kind of telling him how to play. It was after I had played, I handed him the controller, asked if he wanted to give it a shot, and just walking him through that. But I mean, overall, this one, it's fun. I enjoy it. Like I said, I'm really happy that it maintains the same spirit and the same feel as Moon Patrol. And so obviously it looks different, and it has certain changes like going up hills and down hills and stuff like that. And there's also a point where there are platforms on it. And so just enough changes to make it interesting and feels like what a remake of this kind of game should be. But of course, it is a challenge. It's not an easy game, and so if you're a casual gamer, it might not be your jam, where you fall into the pits a lot. But if you give enough practice, then you can get the hang of it, just like this guy did. But overall, I liked it. I liked the console and the games that I played. There were a couple of games that I didn't get a chance to play, such as a pool game where you play billiards or snooker, and there was an emoji charades game, which kind of looked like something you would find with one of the Jack-in-the-Box games. And so while I didn't get to play those, from the other stuff that I did play, including Shark, which I didn't get any footage of, surprisingly enough, I guess because we were just playing it, that was my daughter's favorite. She really enjoyed that, and again, she's 5 and just had fun with that. Shark is where you're a fish and you eat smaller fish to grow into a bigger fish, and there are things like sharks that you have to watch out for, and that's a great multiplayer game and a lot of fun. But that's what the Amico is really aiming for, is family entertainment, multiplayer entertainment. I do hope that they do have some more single-player games kind of like this, but of course this also does have a multiplayer mode. I just didn't get a chance to check that out. But yeah, overall, I liked what I saw. I wanted to see the Amico in person before I made any sort of decision on it. I guess I'm still kind of gonna wait and see how things are gonna be when it releases and all that. But yeah, it's definitely worth taking a look at, and it has more arcade exclusive or arcade remakes coming to it exclusively, such as Missile Command, Breakout, Asteroids. I think he mentioned Crystal Castles at one point, but I might be misremembering that. But certainly nice to see some of these games getting that treatment. And as also mentioned, I think a lot of these games with some small tweaks could work as modern arcade games. And it'd be nice to have some better graphics too. I mean, why not? But yeah, that's my overall impression of the Intellivision Amico, which is coming soon, eventually. And so let me know what you think below, and we'll catch you on the next video.